This week, first up, it's the enterprise security news. NeuVector is adding a container security platform and automating end-to-end vulnerability management. Sysdig expands unified monitoring across IBM global cloud services. Optiv hires Deloitte, Stalwart, Lynch as chief executive officer. Illusive Networks integrates with Infoblox, and Microsoft's April 2020 patch Tuesday arrives with fixes for 3 zero-day exploits. We then welcome Terry McCorkle, the founder and CEO of PhishCloud, to discuss phishing's effect on the corporate culture. In our final segment, Tim Williams, founder and CEO of Index Engines, talks about how testing is the missing link in protecting your data against ransomware. So stay tuned for all that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. The Viavi Solutions Observer Platform provides SecOps teams a powerful combination of comprehensive data for threat hunting and incident response that includes wire data analytics and enriched flow records. Using pure, unaltered packet and net flow, Observer presents views across the entire IT infrastructure with threat alert features including scope, impact, and advanced traffic profiling. Teams can use automated workflows to dive into high-fidelity network evidence and more quickly resolve issues, minimizing impact on customers, users, and business operations. Learn more about the Viavi Network Security Solution and download free resources at securityweekly.com/Viavi. That's VIAVI. You want to get the right things done for your security program. Sounds simple, but what are the right things for you? What does done mean? And how are you going to get there? Rapid7 realizes more than anyone how hard this can be. While Rapid7's Insight platform offers you industry-leading vulnerability management and detection and response solutions, their focus is on understanding where you are so that they can help you get where you're going. Visit securityweekly.com/Rapid7 to get started. Welcome, everyone, to episode 179 of Enterprise Security Weekly for April 15th, 2020. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, joined by Mr. Matt Alderman. Matt, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. At least I'll show up for you.
John's got the irons in the fire. It happens. Hopefully he'll be back next week. I know we've missed him the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's just with the current situation. I think he's just a little overwhelmed with a lot of stuff.
A couple of quick announcements. Join Qualys VMDR Live on April 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern for a demonstration of the game-changing vulnerability management, detection, and response offering, a unified solution that integrates vulnerability management, threat prioritization, and patching in a single app. Register at securityweekly.com/VMDR 2020. We're looking for high-quality guests for this show, Enterprise Security Weekly. We are committed to, of course, educating and providing entertainment for the information security community. We'd love to hear from you. If you're on a blue team, you're doing cool stuff for the enterprise, come to our website. Go to securityweekly.com/guests. Submit the form. If you'd like to maybe suggest a friend, make sure you tell them first and then submit them to us. That would be awesome. We review those on a fairly regular basis, no less than monthly, I should say. So this is of course, the news. For the VMDR, do you know who's going to be presenting?
I believe Sumedh is presenting the live demo, and I believe there are some customers also that are going to talk about the solution. I think they were some of the early beta customers.
Yeah, because I was talking to my neighbor. I was telling him he should go to that. I have one neighbor that works in InfoSec. And so when he walks by and stuff and we're outside, and then it's like 30 minutes later, they're like, where's Paul? We're just catching up talking shop. And I was telling him about that event, and I thought it was Sumedh. That's awesome. All righty. Matt, you had a couple stories in there. Optiv hires Deloitte stalwart Kevin Lynch as chief executive officer. We don't often cover personnel changes, but in our call yesterday, Matt, that you and I were doing, it should have a little more focus, I think, because it affects, I think, the go-to-market strategy that the company may have great technology, but a really kind of weak, maybe sales and marketing as we observe in the market security market today, and maybe some position changes could influence that. Palo Alto, not that I'm calling anyone out in particular.
But it did come up on our call yesterday. What I found interesting about this is I've known Dan for over 15 years. When I moved to Colorado, I built Accuvant's compliance services practice. And at the time, it was Scott Walker, the CEO. Then Dan took over. And then Dan's taken, Accuvant / Optiv through a very interesting journey over a number of years with some private equity funding, the merger of Accuvant and Fishnet. I mean, probably one of the world's largest security resellers out there. This was actually pretty big news for me, knowing Dan personally, that they were going to bring in a new CEO, brought in somebody from Deloitte that's managed a big portion of the Deloitte portfolio. The reason I brought this out is it'll be interesting to see what happens now with the Optiv business and some of the strategic changes that are going to happen. So it's something for us to keep an eye on. They've been around in the industry for a long, long, long time with a lot of great success. This was just something that was kind of came out of left field. It's like, oh, wait, Dan's not the CEO anymore. Now, he's obviously advising the board. We'll also make sure that Kevin gets transitioned in to the business. But I'd like to see now what does Optiv do differently with new leadership.
Yeah. And, as is the case with Palo Alto as my example, we believe they have really great technology. I mean, the acquisitions they made are just outstanding. But I got to tell everyone about it. and we're not hearing about it. And if we are, it's not the details that we want to hear, because we know what companies Palo Alto bought, and some of the technology that they have is really awesome. So we want to see that come to the forefront. So it's a positive thing. It's not a knock on Palo Alto. You got awesome technology. Make sure you tell the world about it.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of confusion about where those different acquisitions ended up. What's in Prism? What's in Cortex? What's the difference? What's the strategy? There's a lot of questions, even from the financial analyst side, based on the call that we had yesterday with some of them. These are still questions people are trying to figure out, and it would help if the executive team had a concerted effort to say, look, this is what we bought, this is where it is, and here's our plan going forward.
NeuVector adds container security platform, automating end-to-end vulnerability management. I was curious what they meant by end-to-end, Matt.
Well, so we've seen aspects of this from other vendors. NeuVector is kind of interesting in the container security space. They really came out as kind of like more of a container microsegmentation play. Obviously, that didn't have a lot of sexiness to it, so they've continued to add capabilities. What I believe this is doing, Paul, is similar to what Twistlock and others have done, where they're scanning images, they're looking for vulnerabilities in those images, but they're also connecting some of this to their runtime product. Now, the one big issue I have with NeuVector is that I'm pretty sure they're a privileged container for runtime, and I am not a big believer in privileged containers.
No root in the containers.
No root.
We gotta have T-shirts made up for that or something.
I know.
Really?
Well, we talk about it
really
on ASW every week. It's so funny.
We really should. But tying it to runtime is kind of weird. I mean, the way that these vulnerabilities can crop up is just different than before. It's just different in this environment, right? Sure, you could have a vulnerable library, right? You could have a vulnerable framework. You could have a vulnerability in your own code, but you could also have some type of backdoored library, which that presents a very different problem. That is not a vulnerability, in my opinion. That's a backdoor, and that is a different level of attention and detail and process to prevent those from getting in, and also detect it when you have it. So.
Yeah, and a lot of people, focus on the library binary open source side of the equation here, and I get it, because we know there's a lot of vulnerabilities in some of those libraries. But let's say that you get the binary and the library passed through whatever your compliance security policy is, and now it's in production, and now a new 0-day comes out. Is there something you can do proactively in the running container before you need to patch it and run it back through the cycle? So I think there are some very interesting areas where understanding what libraries and binaries are in your runtime And as you see new 0 days pop up, are there some things you can do to protect them? I'm not quite sure that that's exactly what they did here.
Yeah, I want to cover that tomorrow in our webcast, because there's all of these new kind of points of vulnerabilities and exposures that present itself. And I mean, we can keep it specific to containers, right? I mean, a lot of these carry over if you're cloud native, or if you're running on traditional hardware or whatever. I mean, if you're running on traditional hardware, you should probably put it inside containers anyway, because to me it makes management much easier. And it has the potential to decrease your attack surface, right, in the sense of your application. But then you add on all those other tools you need to manage it, and it could almost increase your attack surface. So I think I have now slides in my head around that. So make sure you check out our webcast tomorrow. Let's see. Sysdig expands unified monitoring across IBM cloud services globally. I forget that IBM has a cloud. I really do. And I'm sure it's awesome and all, but is it? I don't know. I haven't talked to anyone that's ever used IBM's cloud. So if you use it and it's awesome or not, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, Oracle has a cloud too that nobody really tracks or pays attention to at times either, right? Because everybody's so focused on the big three between Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Right. But IBM has a cloud platform, Oracle does. And what it looks like here is that Sysdig is improve their relationship with IBM, because Sysdig's a kernel module, which means you have to work a lot closer with the cloud providers to have that kind of kernel module embedded into the IBM cloud systems that are running that provides these capabilities. They had an initial relationship with IBM Cloud. It looks like they've expanded that to include other monitoring and security capabilities from the Sysdig portfolio. But it requires a little deeper integration just because of how that product works.
Illusive Networks is integrating with Infoblox to speed deployment. This is actually a great partnership. I haven't played with deception at an enterprise scale, but I can imagine as you're putting deceptive targets out there, they need to have real DNS, real host names and real DNS domain names attached to those host names in order to appear realistic. And if you're deploying hundreds of maybe deceptive systems or whatever, you have to update DNS dynamically. And this, I think, is a great partnership, because that's what Infoblox does, right?
Yeah, and that's what I thought you would love about this, right? Is that it allows you to make deception look real, right? By giving it the DNS entries and making those devices and those hosts look real. But
not only that, I mean, if you can automate the DNS host name changing, right, you can then deploy 100 and then go, man, I want to change all 100 of those, deploy them again with different host names, right? And it'll go dynamically update DNS. And Infoblox has a great platform for that, so. And some great I mean, just getting logs from your DNS is really awesome. It really is. It's easy to detect things like tunneling if you're looking at those logs, but not everyone does. Atos extends its cybersecurity offering with identity as a service. Interesting. Have you heard of Atos before, Matt?
Yeah, Atos is a managed security service provider. So what they're doing is now adding additional service offerings. This one's wrapped around identity. Again, we know how important identity is. We also know how difficult it is sometimes to manage and set up. You've got some great systems out there, but if you're a small to medium enterprise, some of these systems are probably, you don't have the resources or skill set to maintain them. So what Atos is doing here is saying, look, we'll provide identity as a service. We'll help you manage it. That way you don't have to have all the resources particularly to do it. It looks like it's built on GCP, which I thought was interesting, right? It's based on the Google Cloud Platform. But again, it's really focusing on helping organizations manage their identities when they don't necessarily have all the resources and tools to do it themselves.
Passwordless is taking on some traction, I think, especially in healthcare, is my assessment. I know we talked to folks at Traitware and several other companies in this space that are really marching forward on having a solution that gets rid of passwords, right? That uses biometrics and your phone and compatible tokens to accomplish that, right? I mean, if you think about multi-factor authentication, you want two ways to authenticate, maybe just get rid of the password altogether, right? Maybe I have a secure token built into my phone and I couple it with some biometrics. That seems to be how a lot of the passwordless vendors are providing security. It does rely on the secure enclave if you're using your phone, the secure enclave on your mobile device to do that. But in some, maybe poke holes at that. I've even been skeptical, but I'm like, it's still better than letting the user pick and enter a password, right?
Yeah, because in most cases, if you're going to build a password long enough or secure enough, you're going to write it down somewhere anyways. So why not just use your biometric, do a QR scan code, which uses the phone enclave to kind of validate who you are to allow you access. That's where Tradeware and Exceed and some of these other companies have really done some interesting stuff. I think the one concern I have is the devil's in the details here, Paul, from an architecture perspective, right? Where is that data being stored? Is that a new attack target surface that has to be protected? Are there better ways to secure how these transactions actually happen? So again, you got to dig in under the covers, I think, a little bit to see how this stuff actually works.
Absolutely. Cisco had an interesting announcement. Now I don't remember the number, but are they
$2.5 billion?
Is what in that number is the amount that you can carry as credit now for a certain period of time if you want to buy Cisco equipment? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so what they've done is it's called the Business Resiliency Program, and offered through their vending financing Cisco Capital arm, they're providing up to $2.5 billion in financing for organizations to continue to buy gear during the crisis. Obviously, VPN capabilities and some of the other things that people need for all these remote workers. But as you can imagine, a lot of organizations are struggling with limited cash flow in the current crisis. So they've extended out credit to their enterprise customers, it looks like, to be able to continue to buy, offset the payment, and just make it easier to get what you need during the crisis.
And we have talked about this, right? I can see a shift as more folks are going to be working from home, probably permanently. The architecture is very interesting. Do you scale down in your offices, in your corporations? I don't know how much scaling down you actually do, but you also have to make the decision: are you going to terminate your VPN connections on premise and manage it yourself, or are you going to terminate those up into the cloud, right? And how are you going to do that? So I think the on-premise equipment is still an unknown for me. I don't think I have any. It also depends on the enterprise too, right? I don't see any really fast changes to equipment and technology right now in a big way. I think we might see a trend over time, right? And I don't know necessarily what that trend's going to be, but there's going to be differences. If there's not as many people in the office, I don't know how much that, what that number needs to be to impact whether you downsize some of your on-premise equipment.
Yeah, I mean, we covered an article on Monday. 3 and 4 CFOs are planning to keep at least 5% of their workforce remote. So we know we're going to see some impact, Paul. The question is how much? How many switches, routers, Wi-Fi gear do I need as I look to keep some people permanently remote? I think the financial analysts are definitely trying to understand the potential impact of on-premise gear in this new environment, and what's the new world look like when we get out of this environment. We could see some declines in on-premise equipment purchases in lieu of supporting more remote workforce.
Several years ago, I'm old, Aruba Networks, before they were acquired by HP, had their access points, certain ones configured so that you could, I forget exactly the connection diagram, right? Or if there was multiple options. You plug it Ethernet into your laptop, and then it acts as a Wi-Fi client, maybe to connect out to your wireless, or you go the other way around And if you can, if you're at home, you could probably find an Ethernet plug to plug in that access point. Then your laptop is the only one that has credentials to get on that access point, and that's how you VPN back in. But there was some kind of VPN capability built into it. I wonder if that technology starts to resurface now, right? And that one of the concerns that I have with people working from home is what does their network look like? And so if you could have a device that you could send to people or maybe do it in software on your laptop, but that basically you plug in and it creates the tunnel. I think a separate device would allow you to control then the network at people's homes, right? Potentially.
Well, or at least a subset of it. Maybe not the whole thing,
right.
But at least the device to corporate asset component you could have a little more control over.
Right. I bet there's going to be people that try that. We'll see. Keep tabs on it. AttackIQ is announcing. They also announced a new CMO. I saw in there too. Speaking of news about personnel changes, the Academy offers advanced cybersecurity training, modularized curriculum, and a cyber range labs to partners, customers, and prospective customers. In breach and attack simulation, I think this is important, right? I think this is the education component that has to come along with this newer technology. And I'm really optimistic about this space. I haven't been shy about sharing my opinions on it. That I think it is a really good thing. I also think that it needs to not live in the hands of security, as we can pass off our operational duties in security to other teams. I think largely this functionality, I'm not saying security teams don't use it, but this functionality, I want it in the hands of my Windows and systems administrators and my ops people, right? To understand as something can automatically crawl through and exploit things, how it does that, and then I can fix them. I think the training has to not just be for security people, but be for your sysadmins as well.
Yeah, the other thing I think that's important about this announcement is you're not pulling people into a classroom right now, and you're not pulling them into a cyber range to do some of this. So making this courseware and some of these capabilities accessible remotely through this academy, I think is obviously needed in this time. Look, attacks are still going to happen. The attacks are still happening. We're obviously, we've got a couple interesting interview segments coming up right after this. Phishing attacks, ransomware attacks, this stuff is still happening, right? So we can't forget about making sure our environments are safe and secure just because we're working remotely, because the attacks are still going to happen. So the ability to be able to continue to learn, be able to leverage some of these capabilities are still important.
Absolutely. Microsoft has a huge patch Tuesday this month. 3 zero-day exploits, 15 critical flaws. We'll probably dig into some more of them this tomorrow on Paul Security Weekly. It crosses Microsoft Windows, Edge, Internet Explorer, Windows Defender, Microsoft Apps, Visual Studio. I mean, the whole gamut. I'm not sure which one of the 0 days that they fixed. I guess I'm alluding to that there's some that they haven't fixed. I guess there's always ones they haven't fixed. Whether we know about them or not is the determining factor. So I thought that was interesting, especially, how do you get everything patched safely? Especially when folks are working from home, and you got to push those updates. I mean, it's that topic we've talked about, right? That it's like the elephant in the room. As you got everyone now hopefully working comfortably remotely, and you've got your technology humming along, do you want to go blast out a patch and potentially break things? And now you can't easily send someone to go fix their computer, right? When everyone was at the corporate headquarters, or most people, if the patch did something bad and you had to dispatch people, maybe if a certain percentage had trouble and help them recover, you could go hands on keyboard and be in the same building. Now, not so much.
Not so much. Yeah, and I mean, even the way they've removed optional updates from the patches, because they're just trying to make it a little bit easier and really focusing on the criticals. They also, in this announcement, pushed out a bunch of their end of life for 6 months to allow people plenty of time for those transition plans. Obviously, we're going to lose a couple months here in the office. So, they're trying to do the right things to make it easier, but you're right. You still have some critical vulnerabilities in 0 days that need to be patched. What happens when the box doesn't come back after the reboot? It's going to be really difficult.
Right.
Yeah.
And
we got we got one more.
Oh, sorry.
We got to talk Zscaler.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and cloud. See, I think we. You know what happens sometimes? We talk about things internally, and I think we've talked about them on the show, and we haven't.
Well, Cloud Needy, we've been involved with Cloud Needy from a very early on. I was working with Guru before I even came over to Security Weekly, and they were a sponsor last year. They were acquired by Zscaler last week. I think the announcement officially came out on Thursday to augment Zscaler's cloud configuration capabilities. What was interesting about Cloud Needy, the reason I like them, we track them so much as a company, is they went after Microsoft Azure first. They went after the Microsoft platform, then built capabilities for AWS, where a lot of the other folks in the space, the Evident IOs, Redlocks, they all went after AWS, which left this really big gap in Microsoft and Azure. So congratulations to the Cloud Needy team.
Oh, yeah, great team. Guru's awesome, great team, and great technology. I mean, when we did the briefing and demo, multiple briefings and demos, I was super impressed. I'm like, this tool can help people get a handle on their configuration in the cloud. So, yeah, it's a good day for those at Cloud Needy. Yes. And for Zscaler, too. I mean, they got some awesome technology.
And Zscaler's customers, yeah.
Absolutely. That will conclude the news section. Stay tuned. Terry McCorkle coming up next.